Hello, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I'm going to be talking about monsters. And if you haven't figured it out, I have my battle mat and battle grid ready, but this is actually monster lore, so we'll come back to this very shortly once I'm ready to do so. And this is like a weekly program where I talk about monster lore. I'm kind of trying to select monsters that people aren't aware of and haven't really seen too much of, rather than things that you have seen. I'm also trying really hard to try and give you monsters that don't have a lot of information on them, where if you look for lore on them, it seems to be scattered or hard to find, or there's missing gaps. So that's what my intention is today, is to sort of cover those sorts of things. And the hook horror, or hooked horror, is the one I want to cover for today. Because it's very D&D, and I mean, it's a pretty obvious monster for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. If you see this, you think, okay, this is a Dungeons and Dragons monster. How's it going, Norok? So grab some food, some drink, make sure you're comfortable. I'll make it clear right now, I'll do my presentation first. I have a lot of notes, I'll cover them first. I will then end that presentation, go into Q&A or questions and answers. Then we'll go into the workshop aspect of this, where I'm probably going to show you with maps and miniatures how to use the hooked horror in your battle, in your combats, like some combat stuff around that. So I'll deliberately show you with a battle mat, miniatures and dice, that aspect of it. And then we'll go and have a look and see if the stat block needs to be altered or fixed, because one of the things I noticed about the 5e version of the the hooked horror, or hook horror, is it seems underpowered. It seems like the challenge rating is slightly out, that maybe the challenge rating needs to be adjusted. So we do all those sorts of things here. That's what the intention is for today. But first off, we're dealing with lore. So Norok is patron, welcome. Thank you for joining. Make sure to take part in the poll. That would be very helpful too. Anyway. Let's get into the main topic for today. Where am I? That's that. That's there. We're all good. I think we're all good. Have some drink of water. Okay, and cycle over there. Here we go. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Now, the topic for today is about monsters and monster lore, and if you haven't figured it out, I'm going to go over hook horror monster lore for Dungeons and Dragons. Now, I'm going to say hooked horror a lot. Although the actual name is hook horror, I'm going with hooked horror just because it flows off the tongue easier for me than trying to say it the other way. So, if you were wondering what's going on, that's the only reason why I'm doing it. No other reason, so don't get too upset when you see me pronouncing it slightly differently or adding in the D. The hooked horror is a large bipedal monstrosity which dwells in the underground caverns under the ground and subterranean locations in the underdark. It looks like a cross between a vulture, a beetle, and a humanoid that has hooks instead of hands. Also known as the vulture beak, the hacker, and the cave dweller, the hooked horror is a terrifying monster, truly. The hooked horror stands about 9 feet tall and weighs between 350 and 400 pounds. A hooked horror has a tough, mottled grey exoskeleton that is of an insect or a beetle. The four limbs that it has, or the front limbs, should I say, these limbs of the hooked horror, they end in a 12-inch long hook, so it's quite dangerous if they were to actually get into your flesh. The hooked horror's legs end in feet that have three very short, short, sharp, curved claws at the end. The head of the hooked horror is shaped like that of a vulture, including the hooked beak that the vulture has as well. It is thought that the hooked horror is a distant or potentially related in some way to the cockroach and the cave cricket. Not sure if that's in fact the case. Hooked horrors do have a smell that most humanoids can't actually detect, but many animals with a keen sense of smell or a good nose might be able to detect something such as a dry, musty odor when this thing is around. Now, the biology of the hooked horror is actually pretty good. I found that there wasn't very much missing, but I filled in all the gaps that you needed. This is a really odd invertebrate arthropod. The hooked horror is unlike any creature seen in Dungeons and Dragons or any kind of Dungeons and Dragons world. It's very, very strange. Hooked horrors have an acute hearing and are rarely surprised, but they also have a keen sense of smell to go with that. The eyes of the hooked horror are multifaceted, like that of an insect, but they're also very sensitive to light, particularly bright light, and they are actually blind in normal light. But then again, they don't really use their eyes to detect anything, so it won't really matter too much. The vulture-like hooked horror is especially susceptible to disease and parasites due to the molting process of its natural armor, and I'll explain more about that in the future. The expected lifespan of the hooked horror is 40 or less years, so they don't live a long time. The chitinous exoskeleton on the back of the hooked horror is extremely thick, and it's also covered with some sharp studs. So yeah, you don't want to grab onto this thing because you'll probably hurt yourself. Over a period of about 2 days, a hooked horror will molt that hard exoskeleton as it grows bigger. And usually this results in the shell flaking off and revealing a soft new exoskeleton. It takes some time for the new hooked horror exoskeleton to actually harden. So it starts soft, it hardens over time, and during this period of time it leaves it vulnerable to injuries, predators, and disease and parasites, which I was just talking about before. The hooked horror communicates in a series of clicks and clanks made by the exoskeleton near the throat that has a sort of like a hollow cavity in it. But another aspect to the hooked horror's communication is not just that part there. They actually rub their hooks together and they bang them on rocks to communicate as well, something that sometimes is not completely obvious. Sounds made by the hooked horror can be used to estimate a cave's size and their distance from anything, basically. It's much like sonic radar or echolocation that a bat would have. So that's how the hooked horror actually sees things. It's by sound. The bald head of the hooked horror keeps the head clean while feeding and plays an important role in thermoregulation. So it's basically releasing heat through its head, otherwise it would sort of overheat. The beak of the hooked horror is made up of curtane. It's a special protein that allows the beak to grow strong enough to support the creature's feeding activities. And you'll find that a lot of birds have curtine is a protein in their beaks as well. The reason that the hooked horror's beak is curved is because the monstrosity will be using it to rip the flesh open off its victim or its prey, and also to crush bones. So it's a very strong beak, and that's why it's curved, is for that very purpose, for ripping flesh off. There is a gland in the hooked horror's abdomen that produces a special enzyme that renders the creature immune to the poisonous effects of eating something like a shrieker, a violet fungus, phyconoids, which is a strange creature in itself, and then zygomes. These are sort of like underground or subterranean, underdark creatures that are more of a plant nature than anything else. Now, if you cut the head off the hooked horror, the nerves in the neck send a burst of electricity to the muscles down its body, telling the creature to move for a short time. So you have the same sort of effect as if you were to cut the head off a chicken. When you cut off the head off a chicken, it doesn't seem to die straight away. It sort of runs around and flaps a bit in circles, and then finally it carks it. And that sort of thing can happen with a hooked horror as well. Now, when it comes to combat for the hooked horror uses their extremely accurate hearing to track and locate its prey. The hooked horror always knows their territory extremely well, and they try to ambush unsuspecting travelers or denizens or anything that they can potentially eat. Battle tactics for a hooked horror are very simple. It drops from above, okay, onto its target or prey. It then uses its hooks to cause wounds and to hold the victim or creature, while it uses its beak to rip meat from the creature, and basically it eats you alive. Since the hooked horror's eyesight is so poor, they suffer no penalty to combat or movement in any way if they are blinded or in complete darkness. Okay, so their sight plays no part into how they can move around and how they fight. Attacks from the hooked horror are silent, and opponents rarely have time to call for help when they do attack. Hooked horrors are natural cave climbers, as their hooks give them excellent purchase on rock surfaces. A hooked horror can move at normal speed up a vertical surface that is not sheer. Okay, as long as it's not a sheer surface, it can move up at normal speed. But even if it is a sheer surface, it can still move up there. Okay, it just be a bit slower. The great weight of the hooked horror means that it cannot hang from the ceiling like other insects can. But this might not be completely true, as some of the sages are conflicting in terms of the information they provide on the hooked horror's ability to fight from the ceiling. I think they might in fact be able to do something like this. The habitat and society of the hooked horror. The obvious penalties for having hooks instead of hands is that a hooked horror cannot use weapons or any kind of tools, although their hooks are kind of like a weapon and they can be used a bit like a tool as well. The hooked horror can only pick up items in their beak, and this severely restricts their ability to amass a large treasure hoard if you are hoping for one. A clan of hooked horrors generally lives in caves and underground warrens. The lair entrance of a hooked horror is usually up a vertical rock wall or a sloped rock wall of some kind. Each hooked horror family unit in the clan has its own small cavern off from the main central cavern. The hooked horror produces or reproduces by laying a 3-inch egg that looks like a rock, which the parents scatter around the cavern to camouflage the eggs with the other rocks that are there. The clan's eggs are kept in the safest, most defensible place to ensure the young hooked horror survive. A hooked horror hatches from an egg after about 6 months, and this will produce a 1-foot tall baby. After 1 year, the hooked horror will be about 5 feet high and will reach its full size after 17 years. Generally, a hooked horror stays with its parents for the first 3 years before leaving the nest. A hooked horror will seek out a mate from about the age of 6 years or older. The clan is usually ruled by the eldest hooked horror female, who never participates in combat because they are simply too valuable. The eldest male frequently is the mate of the clan ruler or leader, and they take charge of all of the hooked horror hunting and any other kind of combat situations, and is usually considered the war chief. Members of a hooked horror clan rarely fight with each other because it doesn't sort of benefit them in any way. The hooked horror might quarrel or not cooperate in some way, but they rarely come to blows with each other. Clans sometimes fight each other under rare circumstances, but only if there is a bone of contention, such as the hooked horror's territorial dispute situation, where territory is being fought over. So it's quite rare for this to happen, though. It is rare for the clan of a hooked horror to want to rule large areas or conquer other clans. So they don't wage war as such. Hooked horrors have a poor relationship with all other species or races, but in the circumstances where they might be enslaved by drow or other creatures, this can change. As a result of living in a subterranean location and in the underdark, the hooked horror might also be able to speak undercommon with the right influence, although it's more likely that they understand the language rather than they can speak it. And you probably need to get them when they're very young from an egg, otherwise it's not going to really work. I think it would be particularly difficult for a hooked horror to communicate in undercommon, but they may be able to understand small phrases that have been taught to them if you get them very, very young. Although the Hoktora don't attack foolishly, like they would not attack a strong party. Generally, though, other creatures are considered meat. The Hoktora retreat when faced with a strong group, and Hoktoras do not recognize or understand indebtedness or gratitude. So, in fact, the simple language of the Hoktora doesn't even have a term for this concept whatsoever. They don't understand it. There isn't a term. Just because a character saves the life of a Hoktora doesn't mean that it will feel grateful or return that favour in any way. They don't have alliances with other races and creatures generally. Beyond the world of Toril, some Hoktoras were known to be found on the planet of Orith. But other than that, that seems to be the only place that you will find these creatures. Now, the ecology of the Hoktora. Although the Hoktora are basically omnivores, they actually prefer meat. Now that doesn't mean that they can't eat flora or vegetation, but they do prefer meat. The Hoktora can eat just about any kind of cave-dwelling fungus, plants, lichen, or some of the other animals that feed off those things. Certainly they will eat animals. When possible, a Hoktora will collect and eat silver and electrum, potentially even platinum because there's silver in it, and that will pass through its digestive system. Why the Hoktora does this, in terms of what is the purpose, no one really knows, unfortunately. Silver and electrum items remain unaffected except for a slight odour that is left when the Hoktora performs a waste dump. So in other words, when it poos it out, and it's just there, and it has a strange smell. It is rumoured that the Hoktora particularly enjoy eating drow, and probably because the drow have been using the Hoktora in various ways, and so their relationship is not particularly good. There exists a small number of Hoktora colonies that cultivate their own food on farms, but this is extremely rare. And when I say a farm, we're really talking about underground, subterranean plants that they would feed off, rather than the kind of farm that you're kind of used to. In any case, a Hoktora sleeps about half of its day, moving sluggishly when it is not threatened, which means the monster can survive on relatively little food for its size for quite a long time. Hoktoras are well acclimatized to cave life, so they feel quite at home there. A Hoktora has few natural predators, even underground or in the underdark. They can usually deal with most things. The Hoktora's exoskeleton dries out and becomes too brittle to use after a few months or so. So if you are thinking you kill one of these things, you get the exoskeleton, you're going to use it as armor. It doesn't really work that way. But you can cure the Hoktora's exoskeleton to stop it becoming dry, and it makes excellent armor, and it can fetch up to 450 gold pieces if you're able to do this. My understanding is that the only ones who have really been highly successful in this area are gnomes, dwarves, and drow at this present time. Now, how do you incorporate the Hoktora into your adventures? I want to warn you now, some of these ideas you will consider silly, some of these ideas you will like. You don't need to like all of them, just take the ones that you want. I do need to thank the Dungeon Master Roundtable because they did assist me in providing with many different ideas, and they have a wonderful video up on the channel Dungeon Class that Mark and Gonzo put up there, and I suggest you go and check it out at some point. In other words, let's go into what could we use this monster for. The Hoktora can be a mutated creature by a wizard and it results in a new species, a species that has multiple hooks on the ends of tentacles. Instead of arms, let's give it multiple tentacles with hooks on the end. It's sort of like an aberration of some kind. It's gone over the top. Give it a bit more of a Far Realm feel to it. A kingdom at war discovers that the enemy's secret code is a language that is in fact the Hoktora clanking and clicking. And so they have to go and find a Hoktora, either capture it or negotiate with it, and see if it will reveal the the monsters or creatures odd language to them so that they can decipher their enemies' codes that they're using. So this is a little bit like a Windwalker, I guess, if you know what I mean. Anyway, an underground community of hooked horrors that are fishermen that use their, or fisher persons or fisher creatures or whatever you want to call them, that use their hooks to skewer fish. I can see there a hooked horror in an underground stream being able to hook up fish quite nicely, probably even better than a bear. Should the characters want to catch a leviathan or a kraken or a giant octopus, they could capture a hooked horror, tie it to a chain and use it as bait, because this bait has kind of got the hooks built in, so make it a little bit easier to catch that large creature. Drows in the Underdark could be breeding the hooked horror on a farm for their delicious meat and the eggs, because the eggs would be quite tasty. You could also have drow cowboys that drive herds of hooked horrors across the Underdark plains for some sort of big ranch outfit. Yeah, I'm taking it from a Western, people. What about a kleptomaniac hooked horror that steals silver coins and silver items as food and then poops out the residue as piles of gooey silver waste? Like, it's not my problem how the players try to turn this stuff back into solid metal, but it would be quite amusing, particularly when you have a character who says, I would like to check the hooked horror for treasure. And you say, there's a pile of waste over there, and it looks like it's coloured silver. Anyway, hooked horrors engage in a... You could look, I'm going to go with extreme sports, okay? So I like extreme sports, so we're going to do this. Hooked horrors could engage in a sport involving base jumping off the cliff face or a cliff face, underground, mountain tops, you name it. And they could use a sail or a parachute or even a skin membrane that they have developed on their back that's tucked underneath their arms, and then they could either use this as just a competition sport thing, or they could use it as a tool to descend on anybody without taking any falling damage or injuring themselves and assaulting unsuspecting victims. Like, wouldn't that be fun? I know, I think that would be fun. Anyway, what about the professional world of wrestling or sumo wrestling with hooked horrors? This would be like part of the Underdark events that would be run by, say, a Mind Flayer colony, or even drow matrons who would engage or hire or capture hooked horrors to do wrestling matches. Hey man, we can make a sport out of this, and we can make some money as well. Another final extreme sport, or even use it as a lethal form of warfare in terms of a tactic, and that has have your hooked horrors attached to a springy bungee cord. One, you could, dropping a hooked horror off a bridge or a cliff face or something like that. They descend on their bungee cord, and if it's wartime, you could drop them off the side of a castle wall, and then they would then hook up their enemy and then zoop back up with them, and then they could then throw them over their shoulder or beat them to death. I mean, whatever you want to do, okay? But extreme sports, I feel like, why can't hooked horrors go bungee jumping too? Okay, let's not leave everybody out, please. Now, how do you defeat the hooked horror? Fighting the hooked horror at range with arrows and spells is probably the smartest strategy, because it specializes in close quarter battles and combat. Affecting the mind of the hooked horror with spells is more likely to be successful compared to attacking its armored body, because it's got a lot of armor on it. Casting a spell that eliminates sound, like silence, would disrupt the hooked horror's ability to detect a creature, because it has very poor eyesight, but it uses its sense of hearing primarily to detect where things are, and that would really mess it up. It would essentially be truly blind at this point by using the silence spell. I would also suggest stay alert and look up. Look up so that a hooked horror doesn't drop on top of you and then injure you from the fall, that using you as a cushion, and then as part of an ambush strategy, then hoe into you with its hooks and tear you to pieces. So yes, stay alert and look up. Anyway, the publication history of the hooked horror is a little bit all over the place. There's a lot of different publications. I'm just going to mention the ones that I think are kind of really important. The first one, originally printed in White Dwarf magazine, number 12. You'll find the creature is here. The Fiend Folio for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. You'll find that there was printed in 1981. And Dragon Magazine, number 131 in 1988, had a pretty good layout on how this creature works. Then we get the Monstrous Manual in number 2, second ed edition. So the Monstrous Manual for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, second ed edition in 1993. The Monster Manual number 2 for third ed edition in 2002. And then it was printed again in the Monster Manual for 4E in 2008, and finally we get the Monster Manual for 5E in 2014. So it's followed the entire history of the game, and this is why it's such an important monster to incorporate into your game if you haven't done so. I think you will find it more than useful for scaring the bejesus out of everybody at your table. So let me know if you found this video useful or helpful, and if you did, fantastic. If you have any questions, please ask them, put them in the comments section. If you have any feedback, please provide that. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. I'm not gone, just give me a second. Just need some water. Okay, all right, it's back to me. It's back to me. Back to me somewhere. Okay, let's have a look what we got in the chat for today. I'm hoping that this covered what people were hoping for. Look, you know my sense of humor. I have a slightly warped sense of humor, so I'm going to include some silly stuff. Okay, I get it. I know I did. But I still want you to consider this a useful resource. Now, one of the things I will make quite clear right now is Patreon is the best way to support me. If you want all the notes that I've put together for this, they'll be on Patreon, okay? You pay as little as $1 a month and you get everything that I put on Patreon. Not only will you get the documentation and the notes from today's presentation, which is compiled from all over the place, and I've added some stuff in. There were holes and I filled in gaps, okay? But the other thing too is I'm also probably going to wind up rebuilding the stat block for 5e. And the stat block, when we rebuild it, will be on Patreon as well, okay? So you'll get it. Yeah, the Hooked Horror is basically a drop bear. Exactly, Matt. Hello, Matt. How are you? Matt Faulkner, hello. Okay, let's get to the chat. Otherwise, super chats and super stickers always welcome, but I want to, if you want to help me out so I keep doing this every single week, and the intention is to do it every week, Patreon's the best way, okay? It is worth your money. You do get a lot. Anyway, let's have a look at the poll. What experience do you have with a Hooked Horror? You've run the monster, 38%. Very few people have encountered it. Painted the miniature, hardly anybody. None, 62%. So we've got a lot of people, only 8 votes though, so we'll give it time. So this hasn't been used by a lot of people. Well, I'm kind of a bit sad. So I guess it's not the Mind Flayer. Like if it's been the Mind Flayer, it would be different, right? I think I said hi to Noroak, who's a patron as well, supports me on Patreon. Fender, hello, also a patron and a moderator. Thank you for showing up. You managed to catch the live stream today? Cool. I'm glad you were able to do so. Fender, you need to tell me what time it is where you are, because I might be doing something over my holiday. I will be continuing my program right through the Christmas period of December because I work. So I don't get to take a break at that time. I take my break in January. And so, yes, things will be interesting over that period. Dungeons and Chronics, hello, welcome back. How are you doing? We got Scott. How are you doing, Scott? Hello. Yeah, well, look, a Hooked Horror pet. If you want to make a Hooked Horror pet, then go for it. Like an attack dog. Oh my gosh. Hello, Spirit Wolf. How are you doing, Spirit Wolf? I love the Hooked Horror too. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. I also realized that AJ Pickett is one of the few people who's done a Monster Lore video on this. And you should, if you don't know who AJ Pickett is, I don't know how that's possible, but he does Monster Lore, and he has a very good video on that topic. So you should definitely check it out at some point if you can. Ninja Hooked Horrors. That's exactly right. We're dropping from above. A salmon stream. And a salmon stream? Awesome in a salmon stream. Yes. Like, why not? Underground salmon stream. You go hooked horror fishing. It is... Okay, so it's basically... What would that be? That is... That's quite early in Spain. So Fender, on my holidays, I might shift my live streams either to I don't do any, and I just paint. But even if I paint, it would still be earlier. But I think you'll find in January, I'll let you know more when my holiday is. I might move the live streams from 12 o'clock in New Zealand to 10 a.m. Why? Because Amelia's here a lot less, so it'll be quieter at about 10 a.m. And also, too, it means that I can do the live stream, and then I can go to the beach and hang out and have my holiday. So, yeah. So expect maybe for 2 weeks I will shift everything and make it earlier. Whether it's this program or it's just painting, you'll find I might shift it only for 2 weeks during my holiday, and that's it. Just so I can spend more time at the beach. Do you know what I mean? Okay, all right. So let's have a look at doing a little look at what this creature's like in combat, since we've kind of dealt with most of the other stuff that's here. And where are we? So back to my grid and Matt. So opening up in terms of the first thing I want to say, this being the hooked horror, it's probably more likely out of any other situation that the hooked horror will surprise the player characters. I think it's almost a given that that's going to happen. It would be very unusual, I think, if they don't actually surprise the party. So when it comes to actually running your encounter with them, they're probably not going to get a chance to see or detect it, okay? Yeah, that's right, the beach, it's going into summer for me here in New Zealand. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to roll some dice, people. So you know the story. Roll a 20-sided dice. I need some initiatives for our player characters. I won't do the whole thing. Hashtag. Roll a d20. Okay, so start rolling some dice while I do my homework over here and start writing up this. So we'll go rogue, wizard, fighter, cleric, DM. Now you can try to do an opposed stealth check and use passive perception if you really want in this location, but even if you've got dark vision and you're in darkness, you have disadvantage on that passive perception. So the chances are you're not going to notice a hooked horror descending from above, okay? It's probably going to get you. Unfortunately, that's sort of life. So I need one more d20 roll for the player characters. I'll roll the monster, and then we should be all good. Thank you, Spirit Wolf. Thank you, Fender, and thank you, Norok. For those of you who are sort of a little bit confused as to what the heck is going on here, we often do this where I get you to roll the dice rather than I do the rolling of dice. It's just a way of getting you involved a bit more. So let's do some initiatives. Initiative. And also going over the basics of initiative many, many times for those of you who have never seen it done. Okay, so first off, our wizard has a +2 modifier for their initiative. It's this. And Spirit Wolf got a 13. Yeah, well, if you don't love rolling dice, I don't know why you're here. Spirit Wolf got a 13. So for the wizard, it'll be 2 plus 13 is a 15. So 15 is our score. So we go wizard 15. Okay, our next one is going to be, or was that supposed to be the rogue that I was supposed to do first? Oh, never mind, don't worry about it. We'll do the rogue next, which has got a +3 modifier for their initiative. So that's a 3. And we'll take Fendar's 16, add that, it becomes to 19 for our initiative. So rogue got a 19. And then our fighter has a -1, and so does the cleric. So they're going to have some penalties, but that's all right. -1. And I know everybody's waiting for me to roll my dice for the DM for the monster. So you could have the monster land on a player character. Like, that would be certainly very painful, but very amusing, I think, in many respects. So it's up to you whether you do that or not. I'm just going to suggest it might be fun to do it. Okay. The dice goblins are ready. Yes, 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 I bet they are. So that's a 19 for our fighter, who got an 18. So you -1 comes 18 for fighter. Our cleric, you got a 17. So Nora got the 19. Dungeons and Chronics got the 17. If you can't comment in the chat and you're finding it difficult to do so, it's because it's subscriber only. So you need to subscribe, and then you will be able to respond in the chat. Okay, so the cleric got a 16 because they got a -1 to their initiative as well. The DM will roll his dice. Here we go. Hooked Horror has only got, now if you're wondering where the initiative modifier for it is, it's not on the stat block, okay? You're just going to use the dexterity modifier, which is 0. So I roll my 20-sided dice, and I got, is that a cocked dice? Do I count that as a cocked dice? Yeah, I do. Okay. So it's a 3. So I got a 3. 3 and 0 is 3. Okay, so I got very low. Very low. Anyway, so we'll put our initiative highest to lowest. So Rogue will go first at 19. The Fighter will go next at 18. The Cleric goes next at 16. And the Wizard goes at 15. And the DM goes last. What a surprise. It feels like it's... Now, if you've got surprise going on here, and I think you should have surprise working with something like a Hooked Horror, if you're only going to use one, it's probably not going to be much fun. Hooked Horrors don't do anything particularly fancy. It's not a fancy monster with special abilities or anything. It's just got hooks, basically, and a beak. Okay, so what we're going to do is surprised Rogue, surprised Fighter, surprised Cleric, surprised Wizard. Don't get to act. DM gets to act at the even though I'm at the bottom of the initiative. Can you imagine what would happen if your player characters that weren't surprised? This thing would be dead by now. It would be dead. Dead as a doorknob. Yeah, it might have dropped. It might have twisted its ankle, or it might have landed on somebody. Like, who knows? It's entirely possible. But so we'll drop down, and if you decide you want to roll 6-sided dice to do some sort of falling damage, then for every 10 feet that the creature falls, they take a 6-sided dice worth of damage. Okay, if you want to do that. I'm not going to worry about that. It's not important to me. I just want to play out and show you what the Hooked Horrors attacks look like and what it does. Okay, that's all I want to do. So we'll do that now, since everybody else is surprised. So it gets 2 hook attacks. Now you'll notice on the stat block it doesn't have a beak attack. There's no beak attack. One of the things that I dislike about this monster is not having a beak attack. Like, it should have one, and it's not there. So its attack bottom bonus is a 6, and it does 2d6 plus 4 damage when it strikes its target. Would somebody like to roll the dice for the Hooked Horror? Otherwise, you just got to roll the 20-sided dice. Otherwise, I'll roll it myself. Okay, so 2d6 plus 4 on the damage. So I'll just put 4 here, plus there. All right, back to this. Okay. All right. Now, you'll if you look at this, it has keen hearing, it has the echolocation, it has no other features other than that. So with a monster like this, you're really relying on only one type of attack and nothing else. So I know what you're thinking, Fred. That seems unreasonable. Giving the creature surprise and all that sort of thing, like, that's just going to ruin the game for the player's characters. This monster will do nothing. If you do not do something like this, this monster is toast, okay? It cannot stand up to the player characters. It is only challenge rating 3, and it has 75 hit points, and it's going to have every single character trying to hit it. So let me do the calculation for the first one. So we're going to go after the Wizard. Go after the Wizard? No, we'll go after the Rogue, because the Rogue looks small and tasty. Rogues always look small and tasty, don't you think? I mean, I always thought I'd eat the Rogue first. They've got an armor class of 14. Small and tasty, easy to hack to pieces. Doesn't have any armor on it. Wizard doesn't either. Does it have armor? It might have a little bit of armor, not much. Nothing you can't chew through. Anyway, so 6 on the attack. 6 and 6 is 12. And the armor class of our rogue is only a 14, so that will miss. The first attack misses with the hooks. You can see our problem here. Like out of 2 attacks, 1 is already missed. So let's get rid of that one. Don't have to do any damage. Next one. Thank you, Norok. And then Dungeons and Chronics, when he rolled the 20-sided dice, this is what they're doing, is rolling a 20-sided dice here. I'm not rolling it today. They're rolling it for me. Part of the process of me avoiding rolling 1s and 2s all session. Otherwise, that's probably going to happen. So we've got 15. Dungeons and Chronics got a 15. This is where we might actually do something to it. So that will be 21. 21 is good. That will hit. You need to get equal to or greater than. So we grab our 2 6-sided dice. We roll those. Add them up. A 6 and a 2. And a 2 to the strength modifier, which is a 4. And that comes out to 12 damage on our rogue. Okay. And probably your party would be about level 2 or 3 when they face a monster like this. If they were to face this monster and they're level 1, it's probably not going to work. Primarily because the damage output for this creature can drop a character in 1 round. And that's probably not a great idea. You probably want to at least have 2 rounds so they have time to make a decision. If they're really unlucky and they get critted, well, that's just life. So that's what I would suggest with dealing with your Hooked Horror is allow them to have surprise. Unless the player characters have got a light source and they look up, they don't notice the Hooked Horror dropping from above. Don't bother applying any kind of penalties or damage to the creature for dropping on the ground, because it's got strong legs. It can deal with this impact, okay, and then it does its damage, and it goes after the easiest meal, okay. That's what I would do with a Hooked Horror. And then, of course, after round 1, we go to round 2, and then the Rogue, Fighter, Cleric, and Wizard will take their turns and probably kill the Hooked Horror in that round, or it'll be almost dead. And it'll maybe, like a Hooked Horror usually will last about 1 or 2 rounds if you're lucky. And that would be it. That there's nothing more to say, okay? If you have any questions before I move on, by all means, just ask them now and I can demonstrate now if you like. But the Hooked Horror is a very simple creature. Okay. All right. So I think I've almost given you guys enough time to decide what Halfling and Wizard stew. That's the one, Norok. They do taste delicious. Very, very tasty stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to move over to the workshop aspect of this, whereas this is where I actually start opening up D&D Beyond. And we go through the stat block, have a look at the stat block, see what it's like, and if there's anything that we need to make adjustments to. I like doing this because I feel like a lot of the stuff that you are getting nowadays is not tailored for you, that everything that is being built currently is designed for players, and all they are doing is beefing up the players' tools and not the Dungeon Master tools, and that's really no good. We actually need to have tools of our own as a Dungeon Master. Otherwise, what are we supposed to do when we run these creatures? Do you just sit there and just wait for the player characters to smash everything to bits? That's not a fun game. That's a cakewalk. And we're not going farming for magic items and XP. Anyway, let me just move a few things out of the way. I'm going to pull up my Dungeon Master Manual, which I have close by, and we're going to have a look at the creature on D&D Beyond, and I'm going to just establish whether this thing is underpowered or not. It might be, you never know. Right, I need some more water. I might need to put a lozenge in my mouth as well, people, just to deal with the fact that it's drying out. Please remind me at the top of the hour that I need to go and take a break. Otherwise, you know what'll happen. I'll just keep going. Long Island Dave. Hello, Long Island Dave. Welcome to the chat. A blink Hook Horror. You really want to do that? Nah. We just want to fix the hooked horror. There's a few things that are probably missing that we need to deal with. So let's just fix it. That's my view is let's fix what they haven't fixed. And why is my phone not working? It's waiting for the ad to play, because apparently I'm having to watch an ad. Okay, there we go. And are we in business? Okay, cool. All right, so that'll keep going. I can see what's going on here, and I can open up my book, and we can go over to the creature. All right, so on here, let's go to create a monster under collections. We'll make a copy of it and scroll on down. Where's my little hooky horror? Hook, 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 hook. Let's keep going somewhere. There it is. And create. Okay. So this is a version 1. I don't know if we'll need to get rid of it, but we'll see in a second. Hook da horror. Challenge rating 3, will that make sense? Okay, let's save this and then just look at the stat block and then we'll decide. If I have time and we finish this fast enough, then I will have a go at doing the abominable Yeti as well, because it would have been nice to be able to cover that and fix that up, because it definitely needed some work, but you need quite a bit of time to make that happen, so we'll see. Hook horror, here we go. So I'm in the Dungeon Master Guide on page 274. That's where I'm looking. This is all in aid of checking to see if what we've got here is suitable for our fight. Sometimes they don't build them the way they should, and so let's have a look. Challenge rating 3 should have a proficiency bonus of a +2. So it's got a proficiency bonus +2. That's fine. No problems. That's all good. It says it should have an armor class of about 13. It's got a 15, so it's a little bit higher. High is all right. That kind of you'd think that would push it up to a challenge rating 4, but it hasn't. It's supposed to have 101 to 115 hit points. It's got 75. That's the average. Don't worry about the average. If we look at 10-sided dice, that's 10 times 10 is 100. We're looking at the maximum plus the 20, so 100 plus 20 is 120. So it's got a little bit more than the guide sort of suggests, which makes me think that maybe this challenge rating should be a little bit higher. And then its attack bonus is a +4. Well, and actually it's got a +6. So almost immediately I'm starting to think that maybe the challenge rating for the hooked horror should be higher. But not only that, it only has hook attacks and it has no beak. And I feel like it should have a beak attack as well. So I'm thinking we may need to build this so it's got a higher challenge rating and add in an extra feature. I don't have a problem with the keen hearing, but maybe keen hearing and smell is the secret here. I think maybe we need to expand that out a little bit. It's got blind sight to 60 feet, which is fine. Dark vision to 120 feet. That kind of doesn't make sense. I mean, why are we stipulating one over the other? It doesn't have very good eyes anyway. Dark vision. Dark vision is what? Dark vision is using your eyes. That doesn't actually make a lot of sense at all. I mean, I almost feel like they should have been reversed. Blind sight should be to 120 feet, and the dark vision, if you're in the darkness, should be 60 feet. If we're saying this creature has got a lot of rods in their retina that pick up light rather than cones that distinguish color, which makes sense if you were underground. So I feel like that's in the wrong place already. So, and strength. So I feel like it's a hook attack of a +6 should stay where it is, because it's got a strength of 18 plus your proficiency. It kind of pushes it up to where it needs to be. But we need to maybe even change that again. We'll see. So it looks out of whack a lot. Let's have a look at some of the other aspects of this thing. How much damage does it do per round? Should be doing 21 to 26 points of damage. On average, it will do 2 hook attacks. That's 11 points of damage on average for 1 attack, so 22. So on average, it does 22 points. That's actually fine. That sits within the parameter that I just mentioned. And it's got no DC. So in other words, I think maybe the challenge rating of this creature needs to change. So what we'll do is we'll plug in the details that we've got here into the 5e tools. That's the challenge rating calculator, and see what it says. Because right now I'm tempted to make some adjustments to this thing. 5e tool. In older versions of the game, this particular hooked horror creature used to be a lot tougher, and they have powered it down. I don't know why they've insisted on doing that. So now hopefully you can see what I'm looking at, and if you can't, you'll let me know. So we're going to pump in some details. I'll get rid of the ad if I can. Okay. Expected challenge rating, it's a 3. Hit points. I believe the hit points on the creature is 75, so 75 is what we put in. It will tell us if we got it wrong. Its armor class is actually 15, so we'll put that up by 2 points. That changes your challenge rating pretty quickly by doing that. It's a large size creature, not a medium sized creature. It doesn't have 17, it has 10 d10s. So let's power that down. We'll see this is already making some... Let's put the Constitution modifier in. What is the Constitution modifier? It's a 15 for Constitution. So 15. That's changed things. That's better. Damage per round is 22. And its attack bonus is a 6. And it doesn't have a saving throw, so we don't have to tick that. And then we go down to no vulnerabilities, if I remember right. This thing isn't vulnerable to anything. It's a very simple creature. No resistances, no immunities. No resistances, no immunities. Super simple. And doesn't fly, and it doesn't deal damage at range. It has no saving throw proficiency. I don't believe it has a saving throw of any kind. No, there's no saving throw. Okay, now let's have a look at this other aspect here. Aggressive, no, it doesn't have that. Angelic Ambusher has advantage on attack rolls against any creature it has. Well, even though you might get surprised with a hooked horror, I don't think that you would be getting any kind of advantage on the attack, because you'd be able to see the creature. It drops down, you see it attacks. You're probably not going to get advantage, but it would certainly get to attack before everybody else. So it doesn't get Ambusher. Avoidance, not really. No, those don't really apply. Frightful Presence doesn't have anything like that. No, doesn't have any of those abilities. Doesn't have Pack Tactics, Nimble Escape, Parry. Super simple creature. Relent, no. Stench, no. It's got none of those features. So let's have a look and see. It has been updated. Reload to see the new content. No, I don't want to do that right now. Okay, we'll have a look at some other time. So it tells me that the defensive challenge rating is 2, and the offensive challenge rating is 4, and it comes out as a challenge rating of 3. So the challenge rating is actually correct. The only problem is it does a lot of things that I think it should do, and it doesn't do them. Like there's no beak attack. You know, one of the problems with making a creature and not aiming for the challenge rating that you're at, and having your offensive and defensive challenge rating too different from what the chart does, you can do it, but you often get a monster that's kind of whack, that doesn't work very well. So this thing is designed to be easy to butcher, but has a good chance of doing a lot of damage for its level. That's essentially how it's been designed. Okay. Anyway, let's go back here. I don't know how you think, but I'm inclined to think we should do some tinkering. I'm thinking, based off older versions of the game, such as 4E, 3.5, version 3, and even Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I'm thinking we might be needing to aim for a challenge rating of 5. I would feel much happier with a 5. Now, the reason being is the attack bonus would be a +6. And even if we add our proficiency bonus to this and it winds up going a +7, it's not as far out as it kind of was before, as far as I'm concerned. I would be inclined to go with that. I don't know how people feel about that, but it also means our armor class is going to line up better, because we'd wind up with an armor class of 15. So it's a lot closer in terms of the range we should be aiming for. And we don't have to worry about that. Damage output one might have to increase, but that allows us to add a beak attack and change and tweak the keen hearing and give it keen hearing and smell, because I feel like it should have both, because its sense of smell is actually supposed to be pretty good as well. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this. Let's go in here. People, you will let me know if you feel like it's unnecessary, but I honestly think that it should be a little adjustment here. No, we can do that. We can do that. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's make some slight adjustments to this thing. Hooked Horror Remastered. So remastered, and we'll version 2. It's a monstrosity, that's fine. You'll let me know if you can't see clearly, and I will change things. But right now, I think my head is big enough in terms of where I'm positioned. Okay. Challenge rating. We're going to boost it just a little bit. And we're going to give it a challenge rating of 5. I'll put the challenge rating in last, but we'll aim for that. Challenge rating 5. That means proficiency bonus is +3. Which means we need to make some slight adjustments here. Echolocation. The Hooked Horror can't use its blind sight while deafened. Hearing. Has advantage on perception, so keen hearing and smell. And smell. Smelly baby, smell. Has advantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on hearing and smell. Here we go. The Hooked Horror makes 2 hook attacks. We need to have a beak attack. So I'm going to put in a beak attack as well. Who has a good beak attack, nice and simple, from an existing monster we could utilize? Somebody have a think about that. Post it in the chat and I'll incorporate it. We'll scroll on down here. We're going to have to adjust the number of hit dice to this thing to buff up at its average hit points, because right now it's not going to work, is it? If I'm aiming for a 5, I need to be hitting a 131 instead. So if I go here, that's actually going to wind up being a 7. Don't know about that yet. Right now it's going to stay about the same. I push that up. So 120. And then if we do the maximum, we're going maximum 120. So I only really need to go up 1 more dice to get what I want. That's it. It'll be 82. Okay. Sorry, 82. 82. And that would be the average number of hit dice. Hit point modifier. Hit dice, and the number of them is 11. The hit point modifier would be, if we're adding another the constitutional modifier again, it's going to not be 22, it's going to be something else, isn't it? What's it going to be? Oh, brain is freezing up on me. So it goes 15, 15 is 2. 2 10s comes to 20. So if you go 11 2s is 22, I believe that's right. 22. 11 2s is 22, or is it 21? 22, 21. Oh, my brain freezing up now. Con modifier is 2, and multiply it by 11 is 22. It is 22. It is 22. Okay, there we go. So that's right. That's the con modifier for the stat block. Okay, that's good. We got that sorted. And then underdark, I don't think we need to change the wisdom, charisma, intelligence, con, dex, strength. I think all those things can stay the same. It's passive perception. I believe it is a trained skill for this creature, is it not? Which means that if we go up to a 5, its proficiencies now are 3, and it has a wisdom of 2, so 3 and 1. That's passive is going to be 14 now. Armor class stays the same, and that little bit there should mostly be done. I'll save this and see what that comes out as. I'm not going to fiddle with its language. Like its language is hooked horror. Okay, it's the language I described as in terms of the clanks and the clicks against its exoskeleton and the cavity in its throat and the rock walls and so forth. So that's what that's duplicating. So we don't have to worry about that. Next, blind sight, dark vision. Now the blind sight is referring to one thing, is it not? It's referring to, what is it referring to? The blind sight is referring to its use of echolocation, and its echolocation should be better. It should be better than something like dark vision. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down here and we're going to switch things around a little bit. Okay? We can still give it dark vision, and it's say that it's got rods in its eyes and so forth, but I'm going to flip it around. Instead of the blind sight being 60 feet, I'm going to make that 120 feet, and its dark vision becomes 60 feet, because its blind sight is really its echolocation. So I think that's the best way to go. So let's do this. Blind sight, 120. Save this change. And this one here, the dark vision, can be 60 feet to represent the fact that it can see in the dark. But it will be absolutely useless. We don't have light sensitivity in here. I almost forgot that, didn't I? Does anybody remember what creatures have light sensitivity nowadays? Is there anything that does? Like, it should probably have light sensitivity. And it doesn't have light sensitivity. Absolutely should have something like that. That would make a lot of sense. Okay, so perception, 3 plus its thing, so I need to make its base value to 4. Proficiency plus its wisdom of 1. This comes out as a 4. Everybody's very quiet today, or is it just my phone not catching up? I don't know. Movement. Is our movement the way it should be? Don't let me forget light sensitivity. So climbing speed of 30 feet, walking speed of 30 feet. Okay. Large creature. It's a bit cumbersome, so I suppose normally you would think it would move faster, but it doesn't. So that's there. Yeah. Okay, I can live with that. So let's save this. And let's go back into what else I needed? I needed light sensitivity. Let's give it light sensitivity. It should have that. Monsters. Now, who has light sensitivity? I'm at a loss as to who has light. Is it the kobold? Kobolds, did they used to have light sensitivity before they became a race, and apparently they don't operate like a normal kobold? Light sensitivity, here we go. While in sunlight, the kobold has disadvantage on attack rolls as well as... No. Well, it's light sensitivity, but it's not the light sensitivity that we need. So we can't transpose this light sensitivity over to our hooked horror and just call it light sensitivity. It's going to have to be called something else. It's going to have to be slightly different to differentiate it. Okay. While in sunlight, the hooked horror is blind. And that's it. I think that's really all it needs to be, but we need to change the name. So a different name to light sensitivity to distinguish it, because it's not like the original, right? Hashtag. Okay, different name for light sensitivity, or sunlight sensitivity. Sunlight sensitivity. I think I got it there. Sensitivity. Yeah, there we go. So have a little think about what that might look like. Do we call it major sunlight sensitivity? Do we call it just sunlight sensitivity? I just don't want to call it the same thing, because that'll just cause problems. While in sunlight, the hooked horror is blind. Blind. Come on. When relying on sight. Blind. When relying on sight. So that's what we needed to have there. I guess we just call it major light sensitivity. If you got a better name, you let me know. That's all I can think of right now. Rely on smell of the dark. We've done that already. That's fixed. We need a peck. What about the axe beak? The axe beak would have an attack that we could use to incorporate into this creature. Oh, we're at the top of the hour too, so I probably should tootle off in a second and take a short break before I come back and we continue. But let's have a look. Axe beak. Is that right? Axe beak. Do I get it? Axe beak. Basic rules. Beak. Weapon. Attack. There. That's what we want. We're going to take this. We're going to drag that. Copy that. And put it right over the other side of this. The hooked horror makes 2 hook attacks. Makes 1 beak attack and 2 hook attacks. That will increase our damage output, I realize. So strength, its strength is what? It's quite a bit higher than that. Let me think. Strength comes out at what? Strength modifier. Proficiency bonus is 3, because we're now at challenge rating 5. So strength is where? 18, so that's a 4. 3 and 4 is a 7, so our attack modifier should actually be higher. But it means our armor class we don't have to fiddle with. I've fixed the hit points, so that's a 7. So that's slightly up. That's only 1 point up. Doesn't require any adjustment. Would normally should be 6, but if we only move it by 1, it doesn't have any effect. So that's all good. Its damage output is going to be higher than that. It'll be a 4 because it's for its strength, plus a d8. So that's 4, 2. No, that'll be 4, 4. That's 8. 8 is our average. which is fine. So 22 and 8 becomes 22 and 8 is 30. Challenge rating should be doing a little bit more damage than that. Well, wasn't actually expecting that to be a problem. We could go with the beak doing more damage, but I feel like, oh, does it? 2d6 is obviously maximum you could get off those dice would be 12. We could go as high as a d10. And a d10 would push it up by only 1 point, and that still probably won't be enough. Or would it be? It might be. So 22, 30, it still wouldn't be enough. Okay. Well, we can't make it 2d6 because that would be ridiculous. The hooks should still be doing more damage, right? It's an interesting problem. Are we worried about it doing exactly the amount of damage we need it to do? Or do we give it more hook beak attacks? We could give it more beak attacks and then it wouldn't matter quite so much. More beak attacks, that actually means we can tone down the number a little bit. And so what would that look like? That would be damage output. So this is a 6 here. Now it should be a 7. Roll 2, da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, the target's range, that's fine. Damage output is fine. We don't have to change anything with that. Piercing, da-da-da. So that's all good. Where are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? What's the easiest way? If our hooks do 11, and we have 2 of them, and we get 22, and we're aiming to get ourselves into the 33 to 38 range, and we need to do that with the beak. We can't do it with the beak easily, but we could give it additional beak attacks. Like we could give it 4 attacks. That actually probably might work a bit better. We can also spread our attacks around a little bit, which means you can attack potentially 4 individuals if you have 4 individuals close by, which is actually going to be probably better for a monster if you're going to use it like a solo monster, which I'm not suggesting that you should do that, but maybe that's the solution. Everybody's very quiet today. I haven't seen a single thing coming through. Is it my imagination, or is it it's just me? Am I scaring people off? Is this too hard? Are people working too hard? Oh, I see what's going on. There are people commenting. Sunburn. The phone is just not updating. That's what the problem is. My phone is behind. Yep, the chat on the phone is behind. Okay, let me just flick over to a different screen so I can look at the chat. Sorry, people, I don't know why. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my phone, close that up again, I'll open it again and see if this works, and we actually get an updated chat, because right now you're right behind and I can't see anything. Okay, here we go, that's better. So Matt had suggested sunburn, light allergies, light madness. Okay, Spirit Wolf, those are not too bad, that's pretty good. Sunblind. Sunblind is good. Noroak, I think that's a good idea. Light frailty, drunkard sight, sunlight weakness. Sunlight weakness is not too bad either. Fender, I assumed you guys were ignoring me. I really thought. It is past the top of the hour, I do realise. But I was like wanting to figure out, no, don't play a blooming ad. Like, stop it. Yeah, apparently I fell behind. I was in the future and fell into the past. So let's have a look at this. Somebody presented something that I thought was good. Sunblind. This is a good idea. Sunblind. Let's do that. Sunblind. Nice one, Noroak. You do this a lot, don't you, mate? You always seem to have some really good ideas. My phone is awful. Okay, so let's do 2 beak attacks. 2 beak attacks would do on average 8. And if I do another 8, that's equals to 16. So if I go to 22, 16 and 22 comes to a total of 16 and 22 equals, that's 8, 38. Is 38 right? 38's at the top end of the marker, but it's actually going to work. So that's our solution. There you are, go people. 2. You get 2 attacks. So now it actually is a significant 2 big attacks, and there we go. That solved our problem. We don't have to fiddle with our maths here. That all looks correct. That's all good. Was there anything else I needed to do with this this thing before we moved on? And I go take a break, and then I'll maybe come back and we'll do the abominable snowman. The abominable yeti, yeah, sorry. Let's just see if this works. Let us go and see what the stat block looks like in my little collection. Hook Horror Remastered. So, first off, looking at this. Armor class is right. Hit points should be correct. It's 82. Which means our top end is where we need it to be, which was 110, 132. 132. Yeah, that's good. That's right. Climb speed, walking speed's fine. Our perception of adjusted. Our blind sight was switched over to 120 feet, and the dark vision is at 60 feet. We've got our language. We've got, that's the bonuses there. Echolocation is fine. Hooked Horror can't use its blind sight while deafened. That makes sense. That all looks like it makes sense. And then we've got a monster that can actually make quite a few different attacks. And our damage output is kind of spot on, I would say. I'd say we're just about spot on. So let's pump the facts into the challenge rating calculator. Arigato. Arigato. Let's see what we have here. We need to 5. Actually, let's clear the board. Okay, yeah, I would. Please do not change so much that I can't use this thing again. All right, so 5 is our challenge rating. That's what we were expecting to get. Our hit points were 82. 82, just type it in for it. 82. Me and Matt were suggesting about a grapple with the hooks. Yeah. That's actually not a bad idea. It kind of makes sense for the creature. So what monster can we use to add in a grapple to the creature if we wanted to? That's, I guess, the question. Our armor class is 15, which is what it should be. Our damage output for this is 38. It's top end. Our attack bonus, no saving throws, is a 7. No saving throws, no vulnerabilities, no resistances, doesn't fly, no saving. Okay, that's all right. Don't have any of that. I needed to put in this number here. So this is not medium, it's large. Its number of hit dice is 11, not that. And this should be a 15. That's correct. So all my maths is correct. You agree with the grapple? Roper, I suggest set as above. The roper grapple. Okay? That grapples. Both the rook both have a beak attack and a talon attack that grapples. Now I'm not suggesting we grapple with the beak, but maybe what we do is the hooks do the grapple aspect. Yeah. Yeah, the rock has a beak attack and a talon attack that grapples. Okay, I'll look at the talon. We'll consider the talon our hooks. I think that may be the solution here. I know I should be going and taking a break, people. I just want to get this right. Challenge rating is coming out at 4. Defensive is actually listed as 2. So it actually is going up as high as I was expecting it to. Much to my surprise. Have I missed something? No. 5. Armor class, 15. Yes. Do I need to push the hit points up more? What is it that I have lost? Is it because there's no saving throw involved? That's probably why we're not going anywhere. If it had a saving throw involved, it would get more complicated. All right, so let's go to the rook. And we can probably just port over the rook details pretty quickly. Rook, talon, There it is. How does this look? Is this simple? It reaches 5, it's only 10 feet. We want our reach to be, that's only 5 feet, that's 10 feet, one target is fine, slashing, and it's grappled, you see, until the time ends, the talent is restrained, and it can't use his talents on another target. This actually makes a lot of sense. We're taking it. We'll take it now. We'll take that and go copy, and we'll go back into the editing. And we'll go into here, and I will remove this. I'm just going to recall it hook in a second. Paste. Call it hook. So that's a hook. In attack, its attack bonus is actually a 7. Its reach should be, it was definitely 10 feet, was it not? 10 feet. I'm pretty sure it's 10 feet. Where's the monster manual? 10 feet for the hook. 10 feet for the hook. One target. We're not doing that much damage. We're doing a lot less. It's 11. We didn't change that. 2d6, 2d6. And the bonus damage, bonus from the strength is that. Is it piercing damage? I think it's piercing damage. Piercing, i.e. piercing. Did I get it correct? Damage, and the target is grappled. DC should not be a 19. DC should be a 15. DC 15 for a challenge rating 5. Grappled. Grappled. That's that. So that means they're not okay until the grapple ends. The target is restrained. That's good. And the and the hook. Horror can't use its hooks on more than 2 targets. So we should be able to hook 2 targets, but not anything more than that. Not 1 target. I know what they're trying to do, but I feel like the hooked horror would be able to hook potentially 2 targets. You tell me now if you think that hooking 2 targets rather than 1 target is too much, and I will change it. But right now I'm tempted to do that. I'm ready to save that. That looks fine. I think that will work out perfectly adequate. The roper grapple, it's just above. Okay, so that, I think that might be the way to go. What if I chuck in into the calculator the fact that we now have a saving throw? It has now got a saving throw. It will be a 15. Does that change anything? No, not really. It just, the offensive challenge rating has gone up, but not the official. Okay, all right, interesting. I think it's too much for its size, so we go with 1. The rock can both the beak gear. Joke. I think it's too much for its size, so we'll go with just 1 target. So I can I roll undo? I can use its target on. Can't use its target on another. It hooks on another target. Okay, so we're applying that way. I think that's done. And we need to change the challenge rating because the challenge rating shouldn't be a 5. It's actually going to wind up being a 4, much to my surprise. But that's what we wind up with in the end. It winds up being a 4. slight adjustment. I guess it's not a huge adjustment. It's a little bit. It does something a bit more. Because have you not always thought the hooked horror should be able to grapple? You guys actually made a really good point that it should be able to grapple you with its hooks as it hooks in and makes that attack, and you should be able to use your beak as well. Like, that seems sensible, and we never had that before. So yeah, no, I like that. Okay, let's have a look. Let's make sure I got it all correct. Did it come out right? Reach one target. Ends the target is restrained, and the hook horror can't use its hooks. Its hook on another target. Is it hooks or a hook? It's hook. It's hooks. It's hook. I mean, essentially, those hook attacks are being made at the same time, so it doesn't matter if you are hooked up with one creature. That's the reality. It doesn't really matter in the end. But anyway, I think this is a good point for me to go take a break, and come back, and we'll see if we have time to actually deal with the next problem monster. So I'm going to go with hashtag what do you think the abominable Yeti needs? So I'm probably going to target that little sucker because I don't like that monster. It doesn't do what I think it should do. So let's go there, and I will be back very shortly. 5 minutes or less. I see you guys are throwing some ideas out. I dig the ice script. I hope everybody is happy with what we've done with the hook horror. I think that the hook horror now is a more interesting monster. You've got the beak, you've got the hooks, you've got to grapple with the hooks. You can only hook one creature with your hooks. You can't really sort of try to go for multiples. But you could then, once you've got them, your beak is going to get a good deal of advantage, so it's going to hurt a lot more. So I think that kind of works quite a bit. Anyway, let me just move back to my workspace, And let's have a look here. What have you guys been saying? Freezing fixed look, the ability to form ice elementals, and it's hell, like Ludo from Labyrinth. And really? Okay, interesting. Snowboard attack. Snowblower. Please don't say snowboarding attack, because that just brings the silly part of me out. I would be tempted to do something like that. Okay. All right, so we'll it's done. It's remastered. Let's go back to my collection. Hello, Nacho Man, also a patron. Welcome to the chat, baby. You're going to prepare for a long rest, Noroak. Totally understand. You go do that. You will find at the end of the week I will put up the Hook Horror Remastered up onto Patreon. Abominable Snowman, if I remember right, was a absolute dynamite mess. Does anybody remember just how badly constructed that thing was? 20-foot stun. Nice one. No, we're finished with that. We're all good. So, if we pump in the stats for the Abominable Snowman, the Yeti, what do we get? What do we get? Oh, we get something strange. Fred, we get something strange. Let's have a look at it, shall we? Right, so first thing, we need to see challenge rating. It says is 9, which I'm pretty sure was just butt crazy stupid. It said hit points on average is 137. 137. This is going to be hard to get done in the amount of time we have. Armor class 15. That seems very low, but I kind of get the idea. We are aiming for a huge size creature. Huge. You are huge. Huge. And you, how many hit dice? You have 11d12. 11? No, 12. No, it's 11. It's 11. 11. That's not very many. Let's go down. And how much is your constitution? Your constitution is a +6. So it's a 22. 22. And damage. How much damage does this thing do in a particular round with all the other things that are going on here? It's got a chilling gaze, and it makes 2 claw attacks. Claw attacks do 14 points, so 14 and 14 is something. And then it does slashing as well, +7. So 7 and 7 on 2 attacks. And then the chilling gaze, if it works, will do 22 points of damage. Plus 22. So 22, 21. So, add this up. That is 28 plus 14 plus 21. And then take that. And that's going to come to something like 32, 42, 42, 42, 62, 63. 63 points damage per round. 63. And then we don't need to worry about the breath weapon because it's going to hit more than one target. It's attack bonus. What's its attack bonus? It's supposed to be an 11. Sure, we can make it 11. 11. You were sorry about that. Cold immunity missed the CR rating really badly. Yeah, I think that's probably part of the problem. And we've seen this happen before, haven't we, with cold immunity. And then, has it got a save? It does. It has a save. It's 18. So it's a save. Oh, it's supposed to be an 18. That's going down. Save there. Vulnerabilities. Does it have a vulnerability? It doesn't have a vulnerability. Have immunity, though. It has 1 immunity. Immunities. Doesn't fly. Saving throws. Does it have a saving throw? Doesn't have a saving throw. No. And then special abilities. Anything. Fear of fire. Snow camouflage. Keen sense. I don't think any of those things are going to make any difference. with regard to here. Doesn't have frightful presence, doesn't have that. Doesn't have legendary actions, probably should have legendary actions and resistance. Magic immunity, doesn't have any of those. Nimble pack, let's, come on, get out of the way. Web. And so it winds up with, okay, so offensive challenge rating 11, defensive challenge rating 12, and it should be a challenge rating of 13. So 11 and 12, 13. So it comes out as a 13. So given all of that stuff, it really should be a challenge rating 12 monster. 12, challenge rating 9 is too low. This is one of the reasons why I really struggle with this. Do you know, the reality is that damage immunity to cold in a cold environment means almost nothing in terms of the party. There's almost no strategic advantage whatsoever because the party are probably not going to use cold damage. So I mean, if anything, we certainly should be adjusting this creature's challenge rating. Effective hit points 274, which seems like a nonsense to me. So I don't know. I'm not really very fond of this. What's the best way to do this? Do we just change the challenge rating to what it should be rather than having it as a 9? Or do we take what was supposed to be a creature with a particular ability to do things and fix it? I guess the answer comes down to what you guys and what you want. So if I got patrons here, what do you want to do? Hashtag. Change the abominable Yeti CR or the monster. Stat block. Did I get it? The ice breath weapon, I'm not worried about the cold breath. The cold breath is 30-foot cone. It targets more than one target. It's actually not an issue. You know, maybe you get 2. If you're lucky, you get 3 people in the blast. Just because it's a cone. Do you know what I mean? It's hard to position a cone effectively. So yeah, I'm going to ask you that question. I'm kind of looking, since it's really the patrons who are going to be getting this, change the challenge rating. Okay. Does it do everything that it's supposed to do? Because last week we had this discussion, didn't we? Like, what effectively are we doing with something like this? Is it doing what it needs to do? And I mean, it's certainly got enough tools in place. Okay, all right. Do you think it's missing any abilities it should have? I was wondering that myself. I was like wondering, is there anything here that should be here? Let's have a look, because we did the Yeti, didn't we? What did we do to the actual Yeti itself? Because that would be the clue to this. Whichever is quicker. I get what you're saying here. If not, just change the challenge rating. Maybe that's the answer. Let's have a look at our Yeti and see, because we can just port over any things that we've done that might have... The cold aura is the only thing that we created that is missing. Do you remember the cold aura that we put in place? And we did make some other adjustments to it as well. But I mean, ultimately, that's probably the only thing. Snow camouflage. So if we add in that, we leave everything else alone. The cold aura won't change anything with regard to this monster. We can bump this up to a slightly higher dice. That's fine. We can bump it up to a D12 if we wanted to. in terms of the cold. But I mean, I don't know if that even matters. I think if anything, it could be exactly the same. So we'll just add this one in and change the DC. That's probably the only thing that needs to be changed. So that's a pretty easy fix. So challenge rating should be different. 1. We'll go down here. We'll put the cold aura in. And that'll be like, come on, paste it. There it is. So it's just the DC for this thing. It should be an 18 rather than 13. 18. So that's done that. That's not really needing to change at all. I think that got most of it, didn't it? Abominable Yeti. Remastered. Okay, and then challenge rating just needs to go to 12. I'm pretty sure it's a 12, right? Yeah. 13 and 11 comes to a 12. And so we'll save that. And that might be it. That might be the end of it. Let's just scroll on down. I'll just check against our Yeti that we made, and that will probably have fixed everything with that, which means you'll also be getting the Abominable Yeti remastered on Patreon as well. Okay, all right, so quick comparison. Abominable Yeti and our Yeti. Did I change the alignment on this creature? I made it chaotic neutral. Although I feel like the Abominable Yeti is evil. Like, I think that's a full out nasty creature. I'm fine with leaving the alignment for this as it is. Chaotic evil is fine with me. Anything that stands out, Fred. Anything that stands out. It's got perception and stealth. Do we have perception and stealth? We have perception and stealth. Nothing we need to change with that, apparently. Proficiency bonus is a 4. Strength is a 7, so that's 11 on our attacks. That makes sense. That's all good. Nothing looks out of place. Fear of fire. Did we make any changes to fear of fire? I don't think we did. Relying on smell. We had the smell ability. That's exactly the same. Camouflage and snowy terrain. I don't think there was an issue with that, was there? No. We are just changing the DC on the cold aura. Its attacks are all good. Its chill is doing its thing. I think that might have done it, people. I think we may have. I think the quick fix is just to have changed the challenge rating, the effective challenge rating, rather than thinking that it's actually not that powerful. This is a pretty beastie thing. If you look at a challenge rating 12 creature, let me look at the stats in the Dungeon Master Guide on 274. This quick table that we've been using. This is, if we build all our monsters to that, we know all our monsters are built to a certain criteria, and there isn't too much variation within them, right? That doesn't mean that challenge rating is going to be any bloomin' good for figuring out if it's going to work with your group, because your group could be incredibly overpowered or quite weak, or have poor strategy, or have really good strategy, or be lucky with dice, or not be lucky with dice. I mean, who knows? So +4 proficiency. Our armor class, it says, should be a 17, but we've got a 15. And that's really to represent the fact that I think the Abominable has the same as the Yeti. No, the Yeti, we only had a 13. So they've pushed it up a little bit, but it's not huge. Okay, all right. That's fine. That's all good. So that effectively changes things a little bit. So that means that our maximum hit points on this thing, are they right though? Should be sitting in the 236 to 250. This is probably going to be out of whack because of that cold immunity. And cold immunity, again, I don't even think it should factor in. Do you know what would happen? What would happen if I looked at it and I took out the cold immunity? I am curious. I mean, I'll leave it in because this is how we were supposed to calculate it. But if we take out immunity and there's no immunity at all, what effectively happens? Challenge rating 8. Is it more appropriate as a challenge rating 8? Let me have a look. Maximum hit points. 11 12s. That would be 110. 110 followed by, what is it? 110 and then another 22. So 132. 132 plus the 66 comes to 198. 198. It's a lot closer to the hit points that we would probably be expecting for this creature, yeah. So its hit points are kind of low for that, but its armor class is low. And it's really that immunity that makes the big difference. So do you know what's going to happen with this monster? It's going to wind up being a pushover. This is why it's a problem. But it's effectively attack bonus is only +7, and that's not going to work. It has to be at the higher end because it needs the attack bonus for the claws has to be 11. Really does need to be 11. And I mean, do you know what an attack bonus for a monster at 11 is? A 21 challenge rating. Like that's not going to be challenge rating 21. Okay, so I think there's a point where we just need to put it aside and say, Fred, everybody, we've done the best we can, and there's nothing else to do with it. So effective challenge rating has been changed. We've added in the cold aura. Everything else stays and remains the same. And yeah, you go and see how it's going to work out. To me, I think the Abominable Yeti needs to actually be turned into a legendary creature. So you get legendary actions. If you get legendary actions, that changes everything. That effectively makes it far more useful as a monster. Because you're probably not going to throw more than one of these at the players. You know, when the party shows up, you're not going to fight more than one of these. That would be silly. It's like a solo monster, and as we know, solo monsters do not do well in any version of the game whatsoever. Doesn't matter what version it is, solo monsters get their asses handed to them. Okay, all right. I think we've done everything we can for the today. So for those of you who are wondering what I will be doing in the future with regard to Dungeon Master, Monster Lore, D&D Monster Lore. Well, I thought it would be nice. I've been looking at some of the different creatures that are available to sort of focus on. And one of the things that I'm trying very hard to do right now is tackle creatures and beasties that don't have a lot of lore behind them. And there are problems in the stat block. You agree, Fender? Yeah. I think there's a point where we just had to put it aside, and that's what we're going to do. So these are the monsters I've been toying with for future weeks. I know people have been asking me about the Grick, but I don't know how to fix the Grick. The reason I don't know how to fix the Grick is I don't have enough information on it and my resources to do so. So the Grick is, although I know that people want me to cover that, I'm just not ready to do so. What I was also thinking would be good to do is the Dragon Turtle. So the Dragon Turtle actually has very little on it. I've done a Dungeon Master Roundtable on it, and so I think like that's a good monster to cover. Another monster I would be willing to consider doing also is the Mummy. Because I feel like a mummy, if you ever run a mummy in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, it's shite. It's absolute shite. Okay? I think if anything, what frustrates me the most is just how easy it is to fight. It doesn't do what it used to do. It doesn't cause mummy rot in the way that we want it to cause mummy rot. Venda, I would like to see you take the T-Rex or some other interesting dinosaur. I think the T-Rex should definitely be on the list. I mean, whether the problem with the T-Rex is as a creature that used to exist, apparently. Okay, so there's plenty of information if I go back into the archives, even if D&D doesn't have it. What else was the other thing that I was toying with the other day with regard to should I cover something like that? I was very tempted to do the Kraken, but the Kraken might be a bit much. I just feel like it might be a bit much to bite off just yet. So we'll see. And also too, a lot of people have already got a lot of videos on that topic as well. And I'm trying to fill in gaps. And then eventually, if I do one every single week, almost for an entire year, I mean, we will eventually get there. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's impossible. So the monster manual, let me just open this up thing for just a second. For those of you who are patrons, you'll know what I am planning to do for sure. For me, the aboleth is certainly on my radar. I would say the banshee's definitely on the radar. That definitely needs some sort of work done on it. The basilisk, absolutely. Bear hair, I don't know what to do with it. The beholder for sure, but it's a lot of work, so I'm not keen to do it too soon. Bugbears, yeah, we'll do it at some point. The bullywog, yeah, probably. Carrion crawler I would like to do. I'm just not ready to do it. The chimera, it's definitely on my target. The cloaker for sure. The cockatrice for sure. The cyclops, absolutely. Cyclops are boring as hell. We need to do something. Dark mantle, yes. Death knight, yes. Demi-lich, yes. I'm not really caring too much about the demons other than maybe the pit fiend or the Baylor. Dinosaurs would be the T-Rex for me. Displace the Beast is certainly on my radar as well. The Dracolich, yes, is there. Certainly dragons, but I'm going to leave them for a long time. The Dryder, maybe, yes. What else? Don't really care about the elementals. The Etten for sure. Fairy dragons, not really. Flame Skull for sure, that's definitely on there. What about mimics? I know they're my favourite. The problem with doing the mimic is that so AJ Pickett has done a really good video on the mimic, and Mr. X has done a very good video on the mimic, and I just don't know that I have the resources to be able to make that work to compete with something like that, even though that would be ridiculous to even think I can compete with it. Also, Dungeon Cast has also done a very good video as well. And I just don't want to go stepping into that toe just yet, even though it's my favourite monster. Okay? The Flump, definitely want to do the Flump, but it's not really an attack monster, so it's probably way down the list. What else? Gargoyle, yes, I definitely want to cover that. The Ghost is definitely on my radar. Giants, I don't care too much about. The Gibbering Mouther, for sure. What else? No, I don't care about that one. The Gorgon, I don't know what to do with that. The Grill is definitely there on my list. That will probably happen. It's a lot of work, though, so I don't know when. Grimlock's probably going to happen at some point, but I don't know when. Hellhounds, for sure. That definitely has to happen. Some of the Helmed Horror, I want that one. That's on my radar. The Hydra, definitely close. Intellect Devourer. I definitely want to cover the Intellect Devourer at some point. Invisible Stalker, yes. Jackal Wears, one of my favourites too, so that's definitely on my list. Kraken, I just don't know when because it's a lot of work. The Werewolf, not just the Wolfware, I've done the Wolfware, but the Werewolf at some point will come up. Medusa, absolutely the Medusa. That's we definitely got to cover that at some point. Mind Flayers will definitely come up. I just don't know when. It's a lot of work. Minotaur for sure. Modrons, I definitely want to cover them. I said mummies. The Naga, that's there. I don't know what to do with the Nothic, but yes, it will come up eventually. Ogres, yeah, it's a pretty dull monster. We could leave it last. Some of the oozes need some major fixes. But competing with AJ with oozes because he's an expert in that field. The Otyog, yeah, I want to deal with the Otyog at some point. Owlbear, definitely on the radar. What else? Purple worm, yes, I want to do the purple worm. It's going to happen. Rakshasa, yes. Ramirez, yes. Revenant, yes, absolutely. Rust monster for sure. That will be on there. I just don't know when. The Roper, more than likely. What else we got here? Shambling Mound. I don't know about the Salamander. We'll see. Don't care about skeletons. Sphinx, yes, definitely. Tarrasque, yes, but God Almighty, how do we deal with that problem? That's yeah. Consider that a pet project. Troglodytes, absolutely. I really like troglodytes, so that's definitely on my list. The Thrycreen, I would like to do them as well. Vampires at some point. It's just a huge amount of work, that one. Will-o'-wisp, yes, definitely want to cover that. Wraith, yes. Wyvern, yes. And yeah, I guess the zombie, but I'm not terribly excited about that one. So that's where my head is at with regard to what I would like to do. I still feel like the dragon turtle is the one to aim for next week. So that's probably what I'm going to try and do. But there's no guarantee. You never know what I'm going to... I have to do the things that I'm kind of captured by. Otherwise, will come out very well. So yeah, in any case, I would like to thank all of the patrons who support me on Patreon every week. I really do appreciate it because they ensure that this program continues and that I keep doing this. I will not stop doing monster lore. I will not stop doing how to defeat them or how to use them in your game, giving you ideas. The monster is the story. And the interaction between players and monsters, that's the story. So thank you to my patrons who support me. You get everything on Patreon. I will make sure it all goes there eventually. If I haven't done it, you just ask for it and I'll make it happen. I want to thank everybody who's been part of this live stream and watched the live stream. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that. And watched the replays and watched all of my edited videos or some of my edited videos and puts up with my shorts videos. I understand they can be frustrating at times, but I got to do them. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.